All right, well, it took until mid-January, but the Mariners, they're finally on the board. Let's talk about Donovan Solano. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, January 13th, 2025. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Mariners have signed someone, finally, like an actual major league player who is definitively going to be on the 26-man roster. They have signed veteran infielder Donovan Solano, as announced by the team this afternoon. It's a 1-year, $3.5 million contract with another $1 million in performance-based incentives, according to Robert Murray, FanSided. Before we talk about the signing, quick shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So, I'm pretty excited today. A lot more excited than like 99.9% of the rest of the Mariners fan base about signing Donovan Solano. One, because we finally get to talk about an actual major league signing for this ball club. It took them 2.5 months to make that happen, but we're finally here.
It's a big one too.
Yeah. Second of all, if you've listened to the show for quite some time, or if you've listened to our Patreon show, probably more so over there that you've picked up on this. I'm a pretty big Donovan Solano guy, mostly because for the last like 3 or 4 off seasons, Colby and I have looked at Donovan Solano and gone, why does this guy always like sign in February or March for like a couple $1 million? Because like, look, Solano doesn't really bring any value in terms of defense.
Still more than a certain somebody else the Mariner fans wanted. But
we'll get into that. Yeah. We'll get into that. He doesn't really hit for power, but this guy, he puts up.
But it sounds familiar.
He puts up high batting averages. Now, not as high as a certain someone that the Mariners fans have been pounding the table for over the last couple of weeks. But it's essentially a pretty similar idea here. I saw a lot of takes. Of course, we're talking about the Luis Arraez discourse that we talked about last week on the show. I saw a lot of takes during that discourse from Mariners fans going, well, the Mariners need batting average, right? They need someone that can put the ball in play, that can set the table for guys, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Donovan Solano isn't going to hit leadoff like maybe Luis Arraez would, but he brings batting average to the table and then some. Last 4 years, batting averages of 280, 284, 282, 286. He was a 118 WRC plus hitter this year in 96 games with the Padres. The year before that, with Minnesota, he played 134 games and put up a 116 WRC plus. He was legitimately really good at the plate in 2023. Mm-hmm. Strikes out about a 20 to 21% clip. It was 21 flat this past season with the Padres. 7.1%. Walk rate in San Diego as well. 286, 343, 417. He's 37 years old. He can stand at second base and kind of at third base, so you really don't want him standing there. Second base, though, maybe like the last time that he played considerable innings at second base was 2021 with the Giants. And he was a 0 outs above average there in about 700 innings, which is average, right?
Yeah, which
he wasn't a negative. He wasn't a positive at second base.
Considering what the Mariners have run out there at second base the last few years, though, probably not any worse than that. So
that's to, at the very least, say like this doesn't necessarily eliminate like Justin Turner, but it does give the Mariners a potential first base option, and like they can fall back on like, all right, if it makes the most sense for us to just like, if we just want another bat and it makes the most sense for us to get that bat at first base, we can still do that. And Donovan Solano doesn't prevent us from doing that. Right. And we'll just eat it at second base with the defense with Solano, which
plus You could always take Solano out of the game late in the games when the defense really matters. You put Dylan Moore out there. The nice thing about Solano is that he really is like, if I think if you put up like Justin Turner's numbers and Solano's numbers side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between them. Except, Solano actually hits about 30 points higher than Turner. It's a little less likely to take walks. Power is going to be about the same. And they're both older players. So really what you did is you signed Justin Turner, but you gave him 3.5 million instead of the 10 to 12 million he's undoubtedly looking for after the market exploded. Make no mistake about this. Donovan Solano at this price is a significantly better value than any first baseman that signed this offseason because he is an above average hitter. At least he has been. He's 37. You never know when the cliff's going to come. Hello, AJ Pollock. But he's 37 and he has consistently been a 280 hitter. He consistently has 340 on base. He's going to slug around 400, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. It's going to be mostly doubles, but that's Justin Turner. He can stand at third base. He could stand at second base, but he probably should play first base or, DH. And ideally you want him to be, facing mostly left-handers, but he's not bad against righties at all. It's just, he's better against lefties as most right-handed hitters are.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here describing Justin Turner to you. And if I told you that the Mariners signed Justin Turner today, I have a feeling that the reaction would be much more excited than the Mariners signing Donovan Solano. And it really shouldn't be. They're practically the same player at this stage of their career.
Well, and again, knowing what the restrictions are that the Mariners apparently have payroll wise, would you rather give Donovan Solano $3.5 million plus another $1 million in performance-based incentives, or 12 plus to Carlos Santana over 2 years? Now, Santana obviously is coming off of a Gold Glove season, but that's a Gold Glove season at first base. First base defense, not really that valuable. Not really that valuable relative to pretty much any other position on the field. The answer to me is very clear. I would rather give Donovan Solano $3.5 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Now, again, it doesn't have to be an either or when it comes to first base.
No, you still have the DH open to you, right? You can still, put Rayleigh in the outfield mostly. You still have the maneuverability on your roster to go. If Justin Turner comes to you and is I'll play for 7, and that's the best you can do. Fine, Turner can be the DH, or he could, platoon first base, and Solano can be the DH, or blah blah blah. You still have those options open to you, but you're on the board. You've raised the floor of your offense, and you've added a piece that doesn't prevent you from doing really anything else. I mean, other than the fact that your $16 million budget is now down to 12-ish, give or take. But again, that makes the Donovan Solano at $3 million make way more sense than Turner at $10 million, because you're getting essentially the same player.
We have to wait and see what else they do with the money that they have available to them,
which I'm sure we're about to talk about. But yeah.
But Solano, again, relative to, Solano in general is a really nice addition from just he's a good hitter, like we just laid out, right? You want good hitters, right?
He was a key player on the Padres, who were one of the best teams in the National League. The year before that, he was on the Twins, who went to the playoffs. He's a valuable player.
Relative to what the Mariners need and what fans want, this is obviously whatever, right? Most people are going to look at Donovan Solano and understandably go okay, cool.
Right, it's not exciting, but
but
you should be a little more excited.
But he helps. He's a good hitter, and he doesn't eat 75% of your budget, of your reported projected budget, right? Like Santana was going to, Justin Turner might still.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's so hard to have a discussion like this when it comes to the Mariners because of the, the payroll restrictions and all that. I'm not championing the front office over the signing, right? But it is a good signing.
Yes. The team is better today than they were yesterday.
Yeah.
And they acquired a player who is underpaid. Right now, a win in Major League Baseball, one WAR in Major League Baseball, is worth roughly $10 to $12 million. Donovan Solano was, he was either a 0.8 F-WAR guy or a 1 flat B-WAR guy last year, and you're paying him $3.5 million. That is value. You're getting more value than you're paying him to be. And that's a good thing. And yes, he does help because he is a guy who you could play at first base and get Luke Raley out of the lineup. But he's also a guy who, I don't know, if Victor Robles needs a day or he's struggling, then guess what? Solano can play first base. He'll contribute against righties just fine. And Raley can go play against righties in the outfield. He gives you flexibility. He gives you some floor. Again, the floor is relative because he's 37 years old and the cliff could come at any time, but he is a high contact guy, stays up the middle a lot. He has a really good chance to hit for average still at his advanced stage. And I keep on coming back to this because it's true. The Mariners essentially signed Justin Turner today. It's just the Justin Turner they signed is going to cost,
probably $5 to $6 million less than what
exactly
Turner's going to wind up making. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it'd be great if we didn't have to care about that $5 to $6 million, but we live in reality here and we know we have to. So
unfortunately it's part of the discourse. It's part of the analysis here, right? Again, how can this front office best maneuver these restrictions that have been placed upon them? Again, if you're looking at a veteran first base type, and Solano is pretty much in that same category as Santana and Turner. Solano at $3.5 million to me is a lot more of a value than Santana at 12 plus over 2 years.
And unfortunately, the Mariners have to shop on the dollar or on the value menu because their ownership is basically only budgeting for that reality.
Yeah.
And so
when
you factor all that in, Solano at this number, it's a no-brainer to me.
I would put it like this. Relative to the payroll restrictions that the Mariners have in place, great signing.
Yeah. Yep.
In general, solid signing.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like there's no like world where this is a bad signing by the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah. A lot of teams should have interest in adding someone like Donovan Solano.
Right. And even if he bottoms out, he costs you $3 million, whereas a guy like AJ Pollock cost $8 million. Mitch Garver cost 12. It is such a low risk move, and it has some decent upside to it.
He helps. He fits the philosophy, the offensive philosophy that Edgar and Kevin Seitzer and Bobby Magallanes apparently have in place of staying up the middle, being aggressive, putting the ball in play. Like he fits in a lot of different ways, and so again, it's a very similar idea to Justin Turner. So we're going to talk more about the signing in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. The Mariners have signed Donovan Solano, veteran infielder, to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Those numbers courtesy of Robert Murray of Fansided. We just talked about how much of a value that is relative to, a Carlos Santana or a Justin Turner, what we think Turner's probably going to get, what Santana wound up getting from the Guardians and what he was reportedly offered by the Mariners. So let's talk a little bit more about how Solano fits in the big picture here. The preference obviously would be to not have Solano play second base or third base, right, Colby? Like he should be the first baseman for the Mariners in 2025?
Yeah, I think that's the preference. I mean, it's where he fits best, and but he can stand at second base and third base. So if you get into a situation where, somebody gets, sleeps on their neck wrong and they got a bad neck, and it's like, oh, we need somebody to play third, but Dylan Moore's playing second today. Like Solano can go do it and not kill you, right? He's not going to be a disaster for 1 or 2 games, every couple of weeks over at second or third. But yeah, I think ideally you want him to really DH and then play first base against lefties so that you can put Luke Raley on the bench. I think that's the ideal scenario for Solano. But the nice thing is that, like, again, he is not only a first base platoon partner. Like it's not that he can only play first base and only hit against lefties. it's what he's probably best at this stage of his career, but it's not all he can do. He can hit against righties. He can go stand at other positions as well. So it's not a pure platoon signing, but I think ultimately you would like to build a roster to the point where that is what he ends up becoming, is mostly a platoon guy who also DHs against some righties and plays third base once or twice a month, like that type of thing.
Yeah, you would prefer that he gets about 350 to 400 plate appearances, which is about where he's been each of these years that he's hit well. He did have 450 plate appearances in his one season with Minnesota, where he put up 116 or 116 WRC plus.
Offensively, you'd much rather him get 450 plate appearances than like Dylan Moore. But obviously, Dylan Moore is the better defender, better base runner, does other things.
Yeah, just the better player. Yeah, just the better player overall. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, pretty much every other year, though, outside of the Minnesota year, this past year, 309 plate appearances, 304 in Cincinnati, 344 in 2021 with San Francisco, 203 in 2020, the COVID year, obviously.
Right.
He played almost every game that year. And then 228 in 2019, where he hit 330, 360, 456. And that's when he essentially broke out. That's when he landed. That's when he started to appear on my radar, and we were paying attention to his market and where we're going. Once he did that for another year in 2021, really, that's when Colby and I started looking at him and going like, why does this guy like keep just flying under the radar? Why is no one talking about Donovan Solano? Because again, yeah, he doesn't hit for really any power to speak of. He doesn't really provide any value elsewhere, but he hits a lot.
He's a very good role player.
Yeah. So if you look at his baseball reference page, you'll see that he has the nickname Donnie Barrels, which we are absolutely going to use on this show for the next year. However,
if he survives a year,
it's not a very accurate nickname.
Not even close.
No, you look at his Savant page. The last time that he qualified in barrel percentage, 27th percentile, 6.1% barrel rate in 2023.
This year was about 3.5, which I think is like 15th percentile at best. So
yeah. So not a very warranted nickname, but we're gonna use it nonetheless. So welcome to Seattle, Donnie Barrels.
Sure. It probably just refers to him hitting a lot of line drives up the middle, which people assume are barrels, but technically barrels have to have a specific launch angle and a specific exit velo to be considered a barrel. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he does hit a lot of line drives, a lot of soft ones up the middle. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's very much the type of hitter that Edgar and the new coaching staff are apparently wanting to try and find and add, and he very much checks off that box. So it makes a ton of sense. And again, at the price that you got him at, with the role that you're likely going to eventually ask him to play, I think that there's a very good chance that this turns out to be a really good signing, and it gives you a guy with some playoff experience. It gives you some respect in that clubhouse, a guy who's been there, done that before. And it doesn't preclude you from doing or prevent you from doing anything else at any of the other positions you want to address.
And most importantly here, he's T-Mobile Park proof, right? Because he's not relying on pump power, right? He's
sure. I know
up the middle. He's up the middle. He's down the lines.
I believe he has like a 480 on base and a 450 slug at T-Mobile Park in his career.
Well, there you go.
In about the same number of plate appearances as Mitch Garver had when he was 0-for. Right. So if you think Mitch Garver was if you knew Mitch Garver was a bad signing because he was 0 for 33 at T-Mobile Park, then I guess you think Donovan Solano is Barry Bonds.
Yeah, he's about to be the best hitter in T-Mobile Park history.
Right. So I mean, if you want to be fair, if you want to be consistent, which I know isn't a lot of people's favorite thing in the world, but if you want to be consistent with your takes,
sure.
Yeah, Donovan Solano, elite signing apparently.
But yeah, like I said, he's up the middle. He's down the lines. Like he's not gap reliant and he's not power reliant. No. So it's a solid signing. There's a reason that I've liked this guy for so long, just as a role player, right? Like it's nothing to get too excited. I mean, like I'm really excited because he's my guy, right? And the Mariners rarely ever get my guys. They get Colby's guys all the time. They rarely ever get my guys. So
It's almost like I'm more tuned in to what they're doing down there.
Sure.
But essentially, you're replacing, you're eliminating any shot that Locklear is going to start the year on your opening day roster, which is good because that guy, you guys know how I feel about him by now, and he really struggled in the big leagues, and he really didn't play that well in Tacoma.
He really has.
He needs to go down to Tacoma.
Yeah.
And I would just add this before we move on. In the past, the Mariners have they like to line up multiple deals and then knock over the tower at once. So don't be too shocked if the Mariners make another signing or a trade or something here in the next, 24 to 72 hours. Not saying it's definitely going to happen, but if you just kind of look at the trend, the Mariners do kind of make multiple moves in bunches, and then they kind of reset and look at the board again and start to line up other things. It's typically how they operate.
Well, they're finally on the board. Hopefully this is just the first of a few dominoes set to fall for this team. They're still far away from doing what they need to do with this roster. But it's a solid first step. And I do appreciate them getting me one of my guys. That's pretty cool. So, yeah. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. When this news broke about Donovan Solano, we were over halfway through our Mailbag Monday recording, which is going to take a back seat today, of course, with the signing, with us having to do this emergency episode. We might do a mailbag on Wednesday, but we did want to get to one of the questions that we answered because the circumstances surrounding that question might change, and there's been a lot of stuff that's come out that may be relevant to the Mariners. So let's just get into it. This question comes from Max, who wanted to know if you had to choose where Roki Sasaki goes besides Seattle, where would you want him to go if you're the Mariners? So a lot has come out about Roki Sasaki today. He is starting to eliminate teams, telling them that he is not going to sign with them. Yeah, there's been a lot of reports from local beat writers of all these teams that have been eliminated from the Sasaki sweepstakes, including Texas Rangers, San Francisco Giants, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the New York Yankees and New York Mets, the Chicago Cubs. Anyone else that I'm missing? It's been a lot of teams. I think that's everyone.
Mets, Yankees, Dodgers. That'd be something. Mets, Yankees, Cubs, Diamondbacks, Rangers. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, the Diamondbacks were never actually in it, but they've been officially eliminated, I suppose, even though they never really got a meeting to begin with. Yeah. And apparently the Red Sox never got a meeting, period. Neither did Philly, so they're out. So yeah, it does feel like we're down to the final 4 or 5 here.
Yeah. So today, Ken Rosenthal put out an article saying that some of those teams that were eliminated were involved, as well as the Toronto Blue Jays, the Mariners, the Dodgers, and the Padres. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is the first time someone on a national scale has said, yeah, the Mariners are involved. I think we've all kind of assumed, I mean, the Mariners straight up, said like we're going to be involved in the Sasaki stuff, but we haven't heard anything since then. But I think we all kind of assumed that they were at least going to make their pitch to him if allowed to. But yeah, we haven't heard anything else, especially nationally. Like when teams have been listed, it hasn't been the Mariners. When there's been like top 7 potential landing spots for Sasaki, the Mariners are never mentioned. So I believe Rosenthal today was the first national reporter to say, yeah, the Mariners are in on this thing. So if we eliminate the teams that he mentioned that were officially eliminated today by Sasaki, that would leave the Padres, the Dodgers, the Mariners, and the Blue Jays. So still think it's a long shot that Sasaki signs with the Mariners. If you ask me to put my money on someone, I would say the Los Angeles Dodgers is where he's going to wind up. But of the 3 other teams that we think are involved in this thing, along with the Mariners, who, to answer Max's question, Colby, who would you prefer that he lands with, if not Seattle?
Sure. So before that, it's worth mentioning, at least for me, if you're wondering like what are the odds really, apparently a Vegas book has updated their odds, and the Dodgers are still plus 105, but that's not, I think they started the year at like minus 115 or something like that. The heavy favorites, now they're at plus 105. The Padres are second at plus 250. The Seattle Mariners come in at third at plus 500. And
that's what you and I kind of assumed, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like when we talked about this back when he was posted, it's like, yeah, the Mariners have an amazing argument to make, right? Because pitching is not the issue for them. Far from it. Like they have 4 homegrown guys. T-Mobile Park is arguably the best ballpark in baseball to pitch in. Mm-hmm. It's never been a question about whether or not they had a strong pitch to make. They absolutely
whether or not Roki wanted to hear it, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have any like confirmed reports that they ever got a meeting. Nothing from the big guys. We haven't heard that they didn't get a meeting, though, and we have heard that from other teams. So who's to say? I mean, they might have been eliminated a long time ago, and we just didn't know.
But I would say on that, now I know like Ryan Divish has expressed doubts about them getting a meeting or having a meeting. Yeah, but he hasn't definitively said, oh, they didn't have a meeting with them or they're out on Sasaki. And fact, Adam Jude.
Go
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Adam Jude today put out an article talking about the Sasaki situation and didn't rule the Mariners out. He didn't necessarily say they were in, but he also didn't rule them out. And I would feel like by now, at this stage in the game, considering all these other beat reporters that are reporting that their respective teams are out, that someone like Jude, someone like Divish, someone like Daniel Kramer would have reported by now, the Mariners are out.
Right. And maybe by the time you're listening to this, that's what's happened.
Right.
But as of right now, as recording, they have not been told that they're out. Now, again, my thing would be like, well, you don't have to be told you're out if you were never invited in the first place. Right.
Sure.
So it's a little bit up in the air, but even with, Divish expressing doubts, he cannot say that the Mariners did not have a meeting with Roki. In fact, he went so far as to say, like, this isn't sourced information. This is based on the other reports we're hearing from the national guys that the Mariners weren't listed as a team that got a meeting. So they probably did. And that's not the same thing. And so I think people kind of ran with that as
well. And on that as well, like it probably would have been reported by one of these guys that, yeah, they didn't have a meeting. Like definitively, right. Like we know, like they didn't have a meeting. So the fact that it's still like up in the air, like that tips me off that like, yeah, they have met with them. They have been talking. They are involved. They're just trying to keep this as quiet as possible.
I think to answer the question, all the way circle back to the question, I want Roki, if he's going to sign with anybody, I want him to sign with the Dodgers. And I know that is kind of like lame. It's a lame answer, but I do have a reason because I agree with you guys. Like, yeah, it sucks that the Dodgers just seemingly get whoever they want, whenever they want them. And, it's bad for baseball that they're collecting all these stars. And it's like, I mean, other teams have that chance too, but whatever. That's a different conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
So I get all that. And like, even Toronto is like, yeah, he signed in the American League, but it's Toronto. At most, you're going to face him twice a year. And I don't think he really makes him a serious threat in the playoffs yet, not with the way the rest of that team is built, blah, blah, blah. Toronto's fine if he goes there. But Texas is out, which is great. Haven't heard a whisper from, about Houston or the Angels, but until he signs somewhere else, I'm going to keep that in the back of my head. Like, oh, great. The Mariners are going to get Ohtani again. But the reason I say the Dodgers over the Padres is because if the Padres were to land Roki, I believe as a team that's looking to shed some salary, that they would probably be more willing to trade Dylan Cease, and Dylan Cease is going to have more interest in the trade market than Luis Castillo. He's a little bit better right now. He's cheaper monetarily. He's only got a year left, so it's probably going to be a little bit cheaper to acquire him based on what the Mariners are apparently asking for Castillo. Whereas if the Dodgers land Sasaki, he's one of their 6. And I think San Diego looks at him and is like, we can't really trade Cease now. We have to, stay with them pitching wise. Maybe we'll trade Cronenworth or Arise or somebody else instead. And we'll keep Cease, which means there's one less talented arm out there on the free agent market, actually 2 less, because Roki's off the board. And if Cease isn't available, Castillo's trade value might go up. And I'm not saying that because I want the Mariners to trade Castillo. It's just if they decide they're going to do it, I want there to be as few options to the other buyers as possible so that his value goes up. So for me, I look at a team like the Dodgers. I don't think they've ever been a particularly strong fit for Castillo anyways. And so if they sign Roki and it eliminates the Dodgers as a potential Castillo partner, it might also at the same time eliminate the Padres from trading one of their stud starters and therefore make Luis Castillo a little bit more valuable on the trade market. So if the Mariners decide they want to trade, then they'll probably get a better price than if they're trying to compete against Pablo Lopez and Dylan Cease also being out on the market at the same time. So that's why I said the Dodgers. Yeah.
When I was gathering these questions, when we were just planning on doing mailbag, I had no clue that the Mariners were actually going to do something today. And before all of this, stuff got reported about Sasaki, my answer was going to be anyone but Texas. But now we know the Rangers are out. So yay. So really, I don't know. Overall, I don't really care where he goes. If this is the 4 teams, like even Toronto, I know they're in the American League, but
if it's not Seattle though,
whatever. I mean, like on a personal level, because I live in Toronto, hey, I get to watch Roki Sasaki pitch in person. That's cool. But also, like, don't you kind of feel bad for the Blue Jays after like everything that's happened to them the last couple of years in these markets?
It's gotten so bad, like that. A national reporter last year tweeted that the best player who has ever played this game was on a plane headed to Toronto to sign with that team. Yeah. And it turns out that he was being lied to and manipulated and used purely as leverage to get Shohei to the team he actually wanted to sign with. Like, this wasn't just like, the Blue Jays might, actually get him done. It's like, no, he's there. He's going there now. That we were tracking airplanes. Like Shohei Ohtani's going to be a Blue Jay. And then nope. And then obviously
wound up being the Shark Tank guy.
Right. And then the Soto guy. And then the Soto thing fell through. They had the best offer for
Soto guy.
Yeah. They had the best offer for Burns, at least the most money. And he literally took a lot less to go pitch in Arizona rather than sign with you. You've had the highest deal for Santander out there.
He doesn't want to take
3 weeks and he won't take it. Like,
you were Jeff Hoffman's third choice.
Yeah. Like the one guy you actually signed was only because 2 other teams passed on him because of a shoulder injury. Like, yeah, it's been rough for Toronto fans, not to mention your core fell apart. You had a terrible year this year. Vlad Jr. doesn't seem that interested in signing right now. Bo Bichette is definitely out of there. Like, it's been a rough, year plus for Blue Jay fans. So I guess if they land Roki, like, cool. I know Mariner fans hate Blue Jay fans because they come down to Seattle and they just root for the Blue Jays 3 times a year, when most of them probably come down to Seattle and root for the Mariners 5 or 6 times a year. But like, whatever. I've never had a bad experience with a Blue Jay fan. So if they land, I'm like, good for you guys. But yeah, I'm not devastated if he signs with an American League. As long as he stays out of the American League West, like, I'm pretty happy.
So shout out to the Mariners for bringing in one of my guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Now do more. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez, Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.